Many times when recalling the events and the atrocities of war, we decide to focus on those that were committed solely on the battlefield. Countries pride their war heroes for their excellent performance when fighting and their success despite all the trials and tribulations that they had to go through. Although these war heroes deserve all the honor and respect they receive, the same amount of respect should be given to those that were captured and turned into prisoners of war. Such men faced a comparable, if not worse, amount of cruelty and torture as a result of the war. They were treated as essentially animals, forced into labor and confined into disgusting and claustrophobic prisons. However, along with many tales of cruelty, there are many incredible tales of escaping wartime prison, and rare cases of the humane treatment of POWs, which demonstrate that while soldiers are fueled by their intense hatred of the enemy, some were able to maintain their morality for when their POWs were in desperate need of help. Welcome to the Great War of 1914. It will take you to the horrors and the incredible moments of being a POW in World War I.
The concept of countries having to take prisoners of war all began with the Hague Convention of 1899. The convention was monumental to the future of warfare as it was the first multilateral agreement between countries. It was the agreement that laid the ground rules of World War I and many wars that would follow. This treaty was started by Tsar Russia, Nicholas II. Several other countries signed this treaty as well, including the United States, Britain, France, and others. The Hague Convention was meant to address the safety of its civilians during war as well as the soldiers themselves in the event of a surrender. The treaty stated that should the other side surrender at any point in time, the successful country is obligated to go capture soldiers as prisoners of war instead of killing them. It was also mandated that captured soldiers receive basic medical facilities to address their wounds. This Hague Convention was rewritten during 1907, but still maintained the same laws and regulations until the end of the war.
The War of 1914 seemed to be a war of constant stalemates where no one side would ever take over the other. Causing the enemy to surrender became a valuable military strategy. A staggering 16% of all Russian troops that were mobilized during the war ended up being captured and sent to POW camps, which was instrumental in the Russians being eliminated from the war. Those that had surrendered had to be sent to POW camps. However, their treatment and well-being was never a priority to the enemy. In the book Kriegsgefangene in Skipton, various German POWs had written a diary that had documented their daily struggles in prison. They reported on the miserable health that the prisoners were in, describing how many prisoners would become critically ill and die of influenza as the outbreaks occurred commonly in their time there. Many of the doctors in the camps were highly unqualified and uninterested with trying to treat the POWs' wounds or diseases. The only slightly more advanced healthcare came from an off-site hospital that was usually infamous for maltreatment. The camps themselves weren't any better either. The accommodations for the prisoners were sparse at best, with only a straw bed and an oven for heating. At worst, these prisoners wouldn't even receive some of these essential accommodations. In Kriegsgefangene in Skipton, the prisoners described their intensely disgusting and claustrophobic conditions.
This kind of accommodation in these living conditions intensify the torment both mentally and physically. From the youngest lieutenants to the captains over 40 years old, they are mostly housed 24 to a wooden hut.
Although life in most POW camps proved to be quite miserable and hopeless, there are a few incredulous tales of sympathetic treatment of prisoners of war and their miraculous escapes. In one case, British soldier Captain Robert Campbell, held in Germany, was allowed by the German Kaiser to leave the country to see his dying mother in Britain. However, he had to promise to return back to Germany after his trip. The German Emperor's reasons for allowing prisoner Campbell to leave the country are unknown, but the world has interpreted his actions as a commendable show of sympathy towards a prisoner. In another case, Private Frank Savicki, formerly a coal miner, became the first American to escape a German camp. In his brilliant escape, he managed to trick a guard into following him into a guardhouse right before locking him inside. After crossing a large river and hours of cautiously slipping through barbed wire, he overcame the ordeal and lived to tell of his remarkable escape. As one of the few prisoners to escape throughout World War I, his story touched the hearts of many.
Thank you for watching our presentation on the prisoners of war in World War I.